For nearly 3 centuries, numerous tribes and empires sought to subjugate the Arabian Peninsula. During that relentless conflict for power, the House of Saud was defeated, expelled from their homeland, and essentially hinged on the brink of annihilation. Yet, fueled by religious fervour, the Saudis eventually bested their rivals and established the modern Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm your host Shirvan, and welcome to Caspian Report. If you enjoy our work and you want to see more original content, consider supporting us on patreon.com/Caspian Report. Located at the center of the Arabian Peninsula, the Najd region is a vast body of sand that consists of arid valleys. Historically, there was little of importance here, and so conquerors, merchants, and travelers mostly stayed away from this seemingly obscure place. It wasn't until the 16th century that Najd gained the attention of major powers. At the time, the Ottomans, having gained access to the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf, wanted to secure their holdings by controlling the interior of the peninsula. This was easier said than done. The inhospitable climate made it exceedingly taxing for large armies to move across. So, after a few early attempts, the Ottomans abandoned the plan. By the 18th century, the Ottomans revised their designs for the Najd region. Instead of directly annexing the interior, they reached out to existing tribes and established alliances and vassals. One such tribe was the Rashidi dynasty. Seated in the city of Hayil, the Rashidis drew their power and wealth from their proximity to the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca and the ensuing commercial activity. Another ally was the Hashemite clan, who had managed the political affairs of the two holy cities since the late 10th century. As the two vassal states set their sights to conquer the secluded interior, the nomadic Bedouin tribes from the Najd were unwilling to give up their domains and prepared for a protracted conflict for the supremacy of the peninsula. In the ensuing fight, the Ottoman allied Hashemites and Rashidis came across some tough Bedouin tribes who fought fiercely to defend their holdings. The town of Dirya, located on the outskirts of Riyadh, became a contender in its own right when the 16-year-old Mohammed bin Saud became its emir in 1726 and founded the Saudi dynasty. Other clans took offense at this, and a bitter power struggle erupted between the local warlords, which would last for a whole generation. During this time, a scholar by the name of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab had returned to his homeland in Najd after studying at institutions in Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. But despite his Sunni education, Abdul Wahhab formulated and preached his own interpretation of Islam known as Wahhabism. His ultra-conservative creed was effectively condemned as heresy by most scholars, including his own family. As a result, Abdul Wahhab was forced to flee from town to town because his beliefs conflicted with the prevailing Sunni doctrine at the time. Then Abdul Wahhab met Mohammed bin Saud, who by then was older and wiser. The founder of the Saudi dynasty recognized the political possibilities in the doctrine of Wahhabism. As such, in 1744, history was made when Abdul Wahhab and Mohammed bin Saud formed a pact, which was sealed by wedding the daughter of the former to the son of the latter. Without this religious political alliance between the Wahhabi ideology and the House of Saud, both entities would have been just another clan and sect among many in the region. However, the two forces combined laid the foundation of the first Saudi state, which was propelled into existence by a jihad. As the teachings of Wahhabism spread throughout the peninsula, the Saudi rulers subjugated all the other clans in Najd. By 1808, the Saudi state had set its sights on the Hejaz highlands and conquered it. During that time, the Ottoman Empire had steadily lost its grip on power in the Middle East. In fact, they had lost control over Egypt to the very viceroy who had been tasked to confront the Saudi Wahhabi coalition. Being acquainted with the Saudi tactics, the new leadership in Egypt sent a military contingent to retake the Hejaz highlands from the Saudis. After 7 years of fighting, in 1818, the Egyptian expedition prevailed and decimated the Saudi state. Immediately after the conflict, the Egyptian leadership ceded de facto authority to the local Hashemite clan. This gave the Saudis precious time to regroup their numbers. 6 years later, in 1824, Turki bin Abdullah bin Muhammad, the grandson of Muhammad bin Saud, returned for another round of hostilities. He seized control of Riyadh, made it his capital, and proclaimed the second Saudi state. This second realm, however, was smaller and more divided than its previous incarnation. Sensing an opportunity, the Ottomans encouraged their ally the Rashidi clan to assault the Saudis, which is what happened in 1891 when the Rashidis conquered the Saudi capital Riyadh and expelled the Saudi leadership to modern-day Kuwait. In this hopeless situation, the heir of the Saudi dynasty, Abdulaziz ibn Abdul Rahman, better known as Ibn Saud, devised a plan to revive his house. Now, whatever opinion one may have of Saudi Arabia, Ibn Saud was brilliant in his execution. In 1902, in his mid-20s, he sailed out of Kuwait with a force of 40 followers. Under the cover of the night, they scaled the walls of Riyadh and caught the Rashidi governor by surprise. As Ibn Saud reclaimed the land of his forefathers, he established the third Saudi state. However, having gained a broader knowledge of global affairs during his stay in Kuwait, Ibn Saud understood that he could not confront the Ottomans along the coastlines of the peninsula, so he did something that was unusual. He showed restraint and bided for time. In the meantime, he built up his forces and cautiously maneuvered between the Ottomans and the British. Then, at the backdrop of World War I, the circumstances changed. As the European powers dissected the Ottoman Empire and drew lines on the map, they created new countries. However, the artificial states severely weakened the authority of traditional tribes such as the Hashemites in Hejaz and the Rashidis in Hayil. Amidst this uncertainty, in 1921, Ibn Saud's Wahhabi army invaded the Rashidi homeland and brought the house to an end. The British government attempted to mediate the sporadic hostilities, but the plan backfired when the Hashemites refused to make concessions. As the rift between the British and the Hashemites grew, Ibn Saud took the liberty to move against the Hashemites. The ensuing conflict resulted in the defeat of the Hashemites in 1925 and forced the local royalty to relocate to Iraq and Transjordan. Yet, rather than outright annexing the Hejaz region, Ibn Saud negotiated a political compromise with the British. In the Treaty of Jeddah of 1927, the British government recognized the sovereignty of Ibn Saud over the kingdom of Hejaz and the third Saudi state. In return, the Saudis agreed to halt their territorial expansion. Although the cooperation with the British would pay off, Ibn Saud's association with Christian powers had upset the Wahhabi contingents in his army. Acutely aware of the situation, Ibn Saud allied with the British and used modern weaponry to crush the Wahhabi elements in the Saudi army and the disobedient princes who had backed them. The fighting dragged on into the 1930s, but ultimately Ibn Saud prevailed. With the conclusion of the civil war and with the cities of Mecca and Medina firmly under control, Ibn Saud's legitimacy was unquestionable. As such, in 1932, the Saudi leadership fused the kingdom of Hejaz and the third Saudi state into a singular body called the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Nevertheless, the undeclared civil war of the 1930s illustrated that faith alone was not enough to sustain the unity of the Saudi government. To appease the Wahhabi clergy, Ibn Saud enacted strict laws and banned Western practices. He also married 22 wives and fathered 45 sons as a means to forge a lasting legitimate dynasty. Still, it wasn't enough. The Saudi state had failed twice before, so to construct a new nation that could stand the test of time, the government needed a steady stream of income, which is exactly what was brought to life by the discovery of oil in the country in 1938. Ibn Saud passed away in 1953, and in the next decades, his heirs took over the monarchy. Saudi Arabia climbed the ranks as a leading producer of crude oil. The wealth that was brought by oil came just in time. Across the Red Sea in Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser had seized power, and his transnational beliefs captured the imagination of the Arab societies. For the Saudis, it was a threat to their very existence. As such, a series of conflicts divided the Arab world in two camps. Egypt, led by Nasser and backed by the Soviet Union, espoused for secularism, nationalism, socialism, and Pan-Arabism, which gained traction in Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Sudan, Iraq, and Syria. On the other side of the fence was Saudi Arabia, which enjoyed the backing of the United States and encouraged more traditional principles with religious values. These ideas gained ground in Jordan, Morocco, Bahrain, Oman, etc. To eclipse their rivals, the Saudis provided a safe haven for Salafi intellectuals from Egypt, who were being cracked down by Nasser's government. However, in doing so, the Wahhabi doctrine imported many Salafi ideas and changed from within. From the 1970s onwards, as the Saudi monarchs embraced Salafi pan-Islamism, the Saudi educational curriculum and the Wahhabi ideology took a more fundamentalist attitude, the effects of which are all too clear in the present. But more on this topic in a separate report. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. Credit goes to our top contributors on Patreon for making this report possible. If you want to aid our objective to remain independent, please consider joining our community on patreon.com/CaspianReport. There's also a link to PayPal below. Either way, all the funds help to keep us self-sustained. For now, thank you for your patience and Saud.